As a surprise to basically nobody, after Tucker Carlson was suddenly fired from Fox News, the ratings for their 8 p.m. time slot, they completely fell off a cliff. And that's, by the way, on top of the drop in stock price, the loss of advertising dollars, the mass exodus of subscribers from the Fox Nation subscription platform. On top of all that, the ratings for their actual time slot have just nosedived. Because you see, on an average evening, Tucker himself would usually generate about 3.3 million viewers. However, after his departure, Fox News Tonight, which is the show that replaced Tucker Carlson Tonight, saw an immediate double-digit drop. On Monday evening, which was the first program after the change, the viewership was down a cool 20%, drawing in only 2.6 million people. Then, the next night, on Tuesday evening, it plunged even further, with only about 1.7 million people tuning in. When you do the math, that is a 50% drop in just 2 days. And by the way, at this moment, we still don't have the numbers for either Wednesday or Thursday. But given the trend, well, it's not looking good. Furthermore, as bad as this drop is in and of itself, it actually gets worse for Fox News. Because when you look at the data across all of cable TV, you find that Fox News is still technically in the lead of other networks, even with their depressed numbers. For instance, on Tuesday, for the 8 p.m. time slot, even though Fox was down a cool 50%, they were still above both MSNBC as well as CNN in terms of overall viewership. But here's the thing. Overall viewership does not really matter to a cable executive. The only thing they care about is the coveted 25 to 54-year-old demographic. This is what the advertisers are looking for. Whoever is able to capture that demographic is able to get the ad revenue. And while Tucker Carlson himself, for the last several years now, was almost always the absolute #1 program for that 25 to 54-year-old demo, the tables have now flipped. Young people are just not tuning into Fox News Tonight. When you look at the numbers, Fox News was third in this key demographic that's coveted by advertisers. CNN's Anderson Cooper came in first, and MSNBC's Christopher Hayes was second, followed then by Fox News. And by the way, just as a short aside, those numbers across the board are, in my opinion, pathetic. It really just demonstrates how cable TV as an institution is on its way out. I mean, look at that chart again. The top spot for this key demographic is Anderson Cooper with 163,000 viewers. That's #1 across all of cable TV. But you know, my little show here on YouTube, Facts Matter, which also happens to publish at 8 p.m., we get more viewers in that coveted 25 to 54-year-old demographic for almost every single episode that we publish. By the way, if you smash those like and subscribe buttons, well, more people will see our videos because by smashing those like and subscribe buttons, the YouTube algorithm will be forced to share this video out to ever more people. Regardless, getting back to the main topic, these cable TV networks are literally fighting with each other tooth and nail, but in the end, just nobody is tuning in. And this really became evident on Wednesday night, because what happened on Wednesday at exactly 8 p.m. was that Tucker Carlson released a short video statement on Twitter. At 8 p.m. on the dot, when, let's say, about 1.5 million people were tuning into Fox News, Tucker Carlson released a video that almost immediately got 40 million people watching it. As of right now, if you go there now, it's about 75 million views. That means that Tucker's short video that he quite literally recorded from his basement received 43 times the number of eyeballs as whatever Fox News was trying to replace him with. That is, if nothing else, amazing. Here's a short excerpt from that video that Tucker published on Twitter.
Good evening, it's Tucker Carlson. One of the first things you realize when you step outside the noise for a few days is how many genuinely nice people there are in this country. Kind and decent people, people who really care about what's true. And a bunch of hilarious people also, a lot of those. It's got to be the majority of the population, even now. So that's heartening. The other thing you notice when you take a little time off is how unbelievably stupid most of the debates you see on television are. They're completely irrelevant. They mean nothing. In 5 years, we won't even remember that we had them. Trust me, as someone who's participated. And yet at the same time, and this is the amazing thing, the undeniably big topics, the ones that will define our future, get virtually no discussion at all. War, civil liberties, emerging science, demographic change, corporate power, natural resources. When was the last time you heard a legitimate debate about any of those issues? It's been a long time. Debates like that are not permitted in American media. Both political parties and their donors have reached consensus on what benefits them, and they actively collude to shut down any conversation about it. Suddenly, the United States looks very much like a one-party state. That's a depressing realization, but it's not permanent. Our current orthodoxies won't last. They're brain dead. Nobody actually believes them. Hardly anyone's life is improved by them. This moment is too inherently ridiculous to continue, and so it won't. The people in charge know this. That's why they're hysterical and aggressive. They're afraid. They've given up persuasion. They're resorting to force. But it won't work. When honest people say what's true, calmly and without embarrassment, they become powerful. At the same time, the liars who've been trying to silence them shrink, and they become weaker. That's the iron law of the universe. True things prevail. Where can you still find Americans saying true things? There aren't many places left, but there are some, and that's enough.
But notice something. Even in that video, Tucker did not address the multi-million-dollar question that's still hanging in the air, which is why exactly did he and Fox News decide to suddenly part ways, whether or not he was actually fired, and or the reasons for his departure. Furthermore, Fox News themselves have not publicly commented on this matter more than their initial statement, which simply said this, quote, "We thank him for his service to the network as a host and prior to that as a contributor." However, having said that, well, there is a source that we can turn to get some inside knowledge about what really happened. And that source is the Wall Street Journal, which recently published an article which gave a detailed accounting regarding what took place behind the scenes over at Fox News. And the reason that we can give more trust and more credence to this particular story, well, it's because the Wall Street Journal is also owned by the very same company that owns Fox News, meaning that both Fox News and the Wall Street Journal are properties of Mr. Rupert Murdoch. And so if the Wall Street Journal has some inside sources about what happened, well, you can very likely trust them. Although, having said that, these media executives at these companies are very, very keenly aware of how to shape public narrative. And so oftentimes, in order to shape the narrative in a certain way, they'll selectively reveal information like this in this Wall Street Journal article in order to shape the public's perception in a very unique and specific certain direction. And so having said all that, just keep in mind that this Wall Street Journal article is essentially absolutely just the narrative that Fox News wants to put out there regarding why they fired Tucker. Regardless, it is still quite revealing. To start with, according to this article, one of the factors that led Tucker to be fired was allegedly offensive language that he made towards a female executive. Specifically, this had to do with text messages that came to light when Tucker was forced to turn them over as a part of that Dominion lawsuit. And while the specific words that he used were redacted prior to those text messages becoming public, apparently, at least according to this article, Tucker was quite keen on having those messages be made public in their entirety. Here's what the article says, quote, "Tucker told his colleagues that he wanted the world to know what he had said about the executive in a private message. Mr. Carlson said that comments he had made about former President Donald Trump, that he hated him passionately, that were in the court documents, were said during a momentary spasm of anger, while the dislike of this executive was deep and enduring." The article then went on to say that the Fox News executives were allegedly concerned that if these text messages ever saw the light of day, they would cause embarrassment for Fox as an organization. Then another factor revealed in this Wall Street Journal piece happened to be financial. Here's what they wrote, quote, "While Mr. Carlson's Tucker Carlson Tonight was popular, it was also repellent to blue chip advertisers, which meant it wasn't providing a huge financial windfall to the network." Now that point is a little bit odd for a company like Fox to openly admit, saying essentially that their news program, while popular, isn't getting enough ad dollars, and therefore they're just going to do away with it. Because this is one of the main critiques of corporate news outlets, that the news that they choose to report is only whatever is acceptable to their corporate advertisers, which happens, by the way, to include a lot of big pharmaceutical companies. It's basically them saying that, yeah, the news is popular and true, but the advertisers don't like it, and therefore we're not going to run it. And so for them to be just so openly saying it like this in black ink on white paper, it's a little bit odd to read. It's kind of like saying the quiet part out loud. Regardless, that is the official narrative the Fox Corp is trying to push, that the few allegedly sexist text messages that were sent to a female executive and the fact that large brands weren't willing to advertise on the show was the reason that Tucker was ultimately let go. Now that's a convenient narrative, and it could be true. Or perhaps Tucker was let go because, as just one example, his was the only program at all on primetime television that would ever even consider floating the idea that the CIA killed John F. Kennedy Jr. Or, of course, it could just be a few offensive text messages. You can decide for yourself why he was fired. Regardless, if you'd like to read any of the research notes from today's episode, I'll throw them all down into the description box below this video so you can peruse them at your own leisure. And then lastly, over on epoctv, I recently published a phenomenal interview between myself and Dr. Peter McCullough, wherein we discussed the inside story of how Pfizer's latest vaccine booster bivalent formulation was released to the American market without any completed human clinical trial data. They released their formulation when they had in hand only the data from 8 mice. Now, that's a very nuanced conversation, which unfortunately is now welcome here on YouTube. And the reason, by the way, that I know that it's now welcome here on YouTube is because about a month and a half ago, I actually did publish an episode exposing this whole Pfizer 8 mice data situation regarding their booster shots. YouTube actually wound up taking the episode down, claiming medical misinformation. Even though, as always, I provided all of my sources, everything was fact-based, and everything was properly linked to in the description box below. But that's just the reality of this platform. Tucker has the limitations of Fox News, and I have the limitations of YouTube. And so if you'd like to check out that awesome interview between myself and Dr. Peter McCullough, you can do so over on epoctv. The link will be right there at the very top of the description box. Just click on that link, head on over to epoctv, and you can watch the interview right away. And then until next time, I'm your host, Roman from the Epoch Times. Stay informed, and most importantly, stay free.